certainly want to make sure that we have enough time for some conversation at the end and questions and answers. My name's Scott Herness. I'm from Montclair State University, the Dean of the grad school there. And I have asked two of my colleagues to join us today to talk about opportunities for new program development. And I was very pleased when Sheryl Huston, who is our senior market research analyst at Montclair State, agreed to come talk to us about marketing studies that we do for new programs. And I asked my new friend, Lisa Boehm, who's the Dean of the College of Grad Studies at Bridgewater State University, to provide another graduate dean's perspective on new program development. So I'm going to lead this off, and I'm going to talk for just about 10 minutes to just put some foundational ideas out there. I'm not trying to be comprehensive, but just that might help to stimulate our conversation. Later on, Sheryl will follow me talking about the marketing studies, and then we'll go to Lisa and she'll give us a view from Bridgewater State. So this is my only slide, and I just had three large points to make. This is an aerial view of our campus, so I'll give 2-minute overview of Montclair State. We're a mid-sized R2 institution. We're a doctoral institution. We have about 21,000 students. About 4,600 are graduate students in master's and doctoral programs. The majority of our grad programs are master's programs. We have 9 doctoral programs. But we've had a very strong culture here at the institution to grow graduate enrollment over the last several years. And in the time I've been here, we've grown from 4,100 to 4,600 over the last 2 years. And a good part of that was from new degrees that were created over the last couple of years. So that's a little bit about, we're in northern New Jersey, very close to Manhattan. So when I think about new programs, I think sometimes it's best to start at the end and then work backwards, because the ideal program should satisfy a number of goals, right? It should satisfy the institution's goals. Does it satisfy the mission of the institution? Is it fiscally responsible for the institution to invest resources in there? It should satisfy the faculty and the department, and probably moving into a disciplinary area that they've wanted to get into, a new cutting edge of their discipline. And most importantly, it should really satisfy the students and provide, you know, a satisfactory ROI for the students so that they would come into a master's program, and at the end of that, they would have a career with enhanced earnings potential waiting for them, so that the investment in graduate education would be worth it. But all of that will start with an idea for what is that program going to be. And in my experience, searching for those ideas are best from the bottom up. And so faculty will know what's going on in their discipline and what are the new areas or where are the new directions that their disciplines are going, and we'll have an idea for forming a new program. Typically, they're going to need help with that, because they may have a good idea about, when we talk about in the PSM, the T-shaped individuals, they have a very good idea of what that vertical disciplinary, deep disciplinary knowledge is, but may less so have an idea about professional development or career opportunities for students. And so for us, the program approval process really helps develop those aspects of the program, and helps to develop a stronger degree as it moves forward. And that's a good thing. That's what an approval process should do. We start with a very skeletal proposal, right? the faculty, it's less than 2 pages. It's like they're answering like 4 questions, because we don't want them to put a lot of work into it. Very, very short about what the program would be about, what they might think the students would be that would come to the program. And based on that, we would then do a marketing study. And you'll be hearing more about that in a minute, which would be a much deeper dive into the utility of the program and the job opportunities, et cetera, about what we might develop. Based on that, they would develop a full proposal, and they'll go through all the usual curricular approval process, including grad council, et cetera. But in New Jersey, we have to have an outside reviewer come in, an independent outside reviewer come in, do a site visit, and write up a report and a review on whether about the proposal, the resources available, et cetera, and the program has to respond to that review before it goes to the statewide process for final review. So that's a little example of the faculty get an idea and how do we develop it and turn it into a program. But it all starts with that idea. So how do you get that idea? This moves to my next bullet point. We as deans can look and we can see what are the enrollment trends in master's degrees that are occurring nationally, you know, and think that there are opportunities there. For example, we know that healthcare and business, degrees in business and degrees in computer science have all been growing over the last several years. So we could look at that and say, well, what of that applies to our institution? We have some healthcare opportunities at Montclair State, and others we just don't have those programs here, or the faculty, and so we couldn't develop those. But to think about how to generate ideas from the bottom up, I just wanted to present this one example with that we've been doing with Graduate Council. And as I've been working with Grad Council over the last couple of years, they were a very sort of pedantic group that were very efficient at doing their business, like approving curricular changes, approving policy changes, but not very strategic in their thinking. So we, over the last year, had several, at every Grad Council meeting, we'd have a high-level discussion about where we want graduate education to go here on our campus on topics like holistic admission, or how to support international students, or professional development. And now we're continuing that, but we're doing them as workshops outside of the Grad Council meetings where all interested faculty could join. And our next one just happens to be innovation and new program development. So we're going to be reaching out to all faculty and saying, do you have ideas for new programs? Think innovatively, and those could give us some leads to follow up on. So I just present that as one example. And then finally, I wanted to just give an example of something that is in development at the moment. Just to present that as an example, we have a master's degree in chemistry, which has had sort of stagnant enrollment over the last several years. But they got a grant a few years ago, an NSF grant, to help bring minority students into STEM fields. And it was a series of scholarships. So they were able to bring in some students of color into the master's program. They had great retention and graduation rates, so they've applied for a renewal of this grant. This provides these scholarship opportunities for students, and in that, they are proposing the development of a new concentration in chemistry, and that concentration would be a PSM. And so the faculty, the department has made some links to industries here in northern New Jersey, one of which is Quest Diagnostics. And Quest Diagnostics is headquartered in Secaucus, New Jersey, up here. And they do medical tests. They create medical tests, a whole variety, including COVID, and they run the tests. So they need lab technicians. And so they were very excited about this opportunity for partnering with Montclair State to create high quality graduates that could be lab technicians. And so they're proposing 2 tracks in this master's. So it would have a foundational heavy chemistry core to it. And then they would pursue one of 2 series of classes in our business college. And they would graduate with both a master's degree in chemistry and a certificate in business. One of those is the certificate in project management. So a master's degree in chemistry and a business certificate in project management. And the other is a master's in chemistry and a business certificate in business analytics, working with large data sets. And so we're optimistic about that. It has all the characteristics and nascent characteristics of a professional science master. So I just present that as an example of a way that we're hoping to reinvigorate a STEM-based master's program using the PSM as a model. So I'm going to stop there and hopefully stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to send it over to Sheryl. Here's that. Okay. Then I'm going to pass it over to Sheryl now.
Okay, and I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so as Scott said, I'm Sheryl Huston, and I am the Senior Market Research Analyst for the university. I support the new program development effort that Scott discussed. And first slide I'd like to share is basically a very broad view of some of the desired learnings that we hope to get to for first for new program innovation. So some of the desired learnings include things like labor market data, program competition in our state or in a region for the program of interest. What are some of the employer inputs? What are the skills, particularly, that employers are in need of at this point in time? Alumni inputs, perhaps internal partners like career services. Also, a very big part is the environmental scan, which is, usually at the state level, sometimes regional level. Also, we do look at US trends as well, just to kind of keep it all in perspective and see where we might differ, but for the most part, we focus on our New Jersey trends and regional trends. And then student input. So as Scott mentioned, what are the students looking for in a program? And that piece generally would come from more of custom research, survey research, or perhaps even focus groups. So these are at the high level, some of the desired learnings. If you look at, next I'm going to talk about some of the sources of information we might look to get to this level of detail that's needed. And for the labor market data, we certainly use the Bureau of Labor Statistics data, as well as we subscribe to a service called, from a company called EMSI. I don't know if any of you are familiar with EMSI. It's EMSI. They are a wonderful company that we've worked with for over a year now. We subscribe to their database. It's a labor market analytics database, and it offers just a whole host of information on, it actually combines not only market data such as employment growth, as well as projections in growth, and then job postings in our state, in the region, in the US, so we can kind of gauge demand for an occupation. It also houses degree completion information from iPads. So I used to have to go to a couple different sources to pull that. Now I can pull it all from this one source. So it's really been a great addition to our market analysis studies. Program competition we also look at. So what are our competitors in the region or in the state? What are they offering? Again, employer inputs to the extent we can get inputs from employers we have relationships with. The same thing with alumni, the internal partners, as I mentioned, and then the environmental scan. We look at not only, for the environmental scan, it's not only just the labor market data, but it's also any published research that I can look at, and there is an awful lot of it, and I review other studies that have been published by companies or consultants, you know, such as either research consultants or higher ed consultants like EAB, or Wiley, or, you know, there's many actually that inside higher ed, there's many that I review. And then students, again, that would come from either our existing students. If it were a graduate program, we might want to talk with undergrads to see about their interest in a program. If it's, we also may want to speak with people that have inquired about a graduate program, you know, through our website, and perhaps do a survey from time to time to talk to those folks. So those are some of the sources. And if anyone has any questions, just please stop me at any time. Then for new program, the details behind the new program exploration. So this is the basic layout of it. So as Scott mentioned, there's an idea for a new program. It might come from a dean or a faculty member. It might even come from me from time to time if I see something that's trending in the market that I might want to suggest we do a study on. And then there's the next step would be the pre-proposal approval form. And that's a quick form. It has, I think, 7 questions on it. As Scott mentioned, we don't want them to go into a lot of detail at this point, just to get the idea down on paper and answer the questions. Things like, you know, who's the primary, what's a brief overview of the program, who's the target audience, what are the competitors that you, in our state or in our region, what are the employment opportunities perhaps, and things like, you know, do we have personnel, you know, the needed personnel at this point in time for the program. Then the next step is to do the market. So once that gets approved, I should say, we have I'll do an in-depth market analysis report. These reports can be quite lengthy. You know, they can range from 50 to 100 pages of information and data. And then at the end of that, I will make some recommendations, not only for the strength of the market and that sort of thing, but also the marketing aspect. So what is it looking like as far as our competition goes, and what are they advertising for their programs on their websites? What are the points that they're stressing? So I also look at it from that end as well. So what I'm going to show you next in the last few slides are the detail behind the market analysis, just a little bit more detail on what is looked at. And so the main objective is to gather the information to further explore new programs, assess the market demand, and provide the insights to help guide its development. The method is to assess the competitive landscape, what other schools are offering, how they're marketing their programs, also looking at career opportunities, job demand for those with this type of degree. So what is the likely job demand going to be for people that might graduate with this degree? And that all comes from the labor market data. Job growth projections. So how are those occupations that these folks would be qualified for, how are those jobs expected to grow over time? And usually we use the Bureau of Labor Statistics 10-year growth projections by occupation. What are the desirable skills and the skill gaps, and also degree completion trends? So what is it looking like in our state and in our region for similar degrees or this exact degree, depending on the CIP code, which is what we use to base that upon? You know, what have been the trends over the last 5 years? So that's at a high level. And then to show you the components, the components of the market analysis study are these primary sections. So the degree completion trends, as I just mentioned, and that could be at a graduate level, undergraduate level. I will report that out by CIP code, and I spend a lot of time up front trying to match the CIP code of the new program idea with an existing one If I can't find one that is a close match, I will approximate and use a CIP code that is similar in nature. We're rather limited in that regard because all of the data is based on CIP codes. So that's how I need to pull the information from the MC database, or if I were to use iPads, I would have to pull it that way from iPads. The next piece is the employment data and growth projections. And so that's Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers. We look at current employment for the occupations, again, that these folks are likely to be able to pursue with this degree. And what are those 10-year growth projections? How is employment expected to grow over the next 10 years? And then job postings. So this is a neat piece that comes from MZ. It is very detailed. There's dozens of reports in MZ. Some of the key ones that I like to report on are top job titles. So what are folks with this type, folks who might graduate with this type of degree, what types of job titles are they likely to obtain? What are the top companies that are advertising these jobs in our state or region? What are the top industries? And then I recently have added some skills sections to the report where we focus in on what types of skills are needed in these postings that are listed by the job ad. And then where are the gaps? So we also have the ability to look at not only what skills employers want, but what is the frequency of these skills in the worker profiles in our region? So that's another piece of it. And I could see where there might be a skill surplus versus a skill shortage in a certain area. And so that has implications for curriculum and what types of skills you might be wanting to emphasize as you as you develop your curriculum moving forward. Then the last few sections are, these sections are obtained from publicly available information. So I go to, first let me step back a second. We select, myself and the dean or the faculty member that has initiated this proposal, we select a sample of competitive programs together. So usually it's about 10, sometimes more, but generally rule of thumb is 10 competitive programs in the state or region. And then I will go to the public websites and pull out information on these programs and do a side-by-side comparison of what types of degree they're offering, are there specializations, what's the number of credits, what modality, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll compare all those things as well as the admission requirements for these 10 competitors and the tuition and fees for the 10 competitors. So that's the competitive comparison section. And then finally, I also do a competitive website review, which is the marketing piece that I talked about earlier. I want to look for the marketing and positioning of the existing competitive programs. So what are they emphasizing on their website in terms of messaging? For example, are they saying, are they talking about the high salary you'll be able to earn with this degree? Or are they talking about the longevity in the career? Or whatever the messages might be. Are there unique program characteristics that make one program stand out above the others? And then also, are they using unique graphics, videos, or other interactive tools to engage the prospective student? And so often I find, particularly these days, videos are just being added left and right to so many different competitive websites that we look at. They're really using videos of student testimonials, existing students or graduates and how they ended up in their career and how the program and the school helped them to get to where they are today. So that is, in a nutshell, at a high level, what we do for our market analysis studies.
Great. Thank you, Sheryl. I'm just going to put a couple of points, high-level points on top of what Sheryl said before we move forward. And that is, you saw that we do this market analysis very early in the approval process, and you now have a good idea of how deep and rich this market analysis is. And so it absolutely affects the final version of the program. I mean, there's lots of modifications that go on as a result of this, including competitive things like we've had, differential tuition for new programs, and we have changed the total number of credits of a program as a result of this. And of course, something we haven't even talked about is we'll do a big marketing launch for a new program. But just saying that this is very early on because it has so much great information in it, and it absolutely influences how the proposal will be developed. So I'll leave it at that for now. I do want to say that I see a couple other graduate deans in the audience. And in CGS, we have an aphorism that we like to use a lot. I probably learned it from Bob Augustine, who's with us today. But we like to say, if you've seen one graduate school, you've seen one graduate school. And that is to say that graduate schools are very different across the country. And so you've gotten a kind of slice of life view of how we do it at Montclair State, because that's what fits us. But that doesn't mean that there aren't many, many other ways or approaches for this. And so we'll move to Lisa, who will give us a view from a different institution about new opportunities for programs. Lisa.
Oh, I'm going to stop sharing. Okay.
Thank you so much. So I was thrilled to get the invitation from Scott and this organization to speak about new program development. I've been a dean for 9 years, and I'm currently the graduate dean of the Graduate College at Bridgewater State University, which is a regional comprehensive state university in Massachusetts. I absolutely love new program development. So when Scott asked this, I thought, well, that's my favorite thing to do. So I was really happy to be able to speak about that. One of the reasons I think it's so fun is that you get to work with a variety of people at the institution and outside of the institution and really think holistically. And Scott's right, you really get to the mission of the university and really thinking about what you're going to add next, if you're going to add anything at all. And I think what's similar about my presentation and what's different about my presentation will hopefully be interesting. Definitely we do some of the same things that Montclair State does. Bridgewater State University is in southeastern Massachusetts. We have 11,000 students overall, and we have 1,648 graduate students this semester, which is really great because that's up 200 from a year before. And that is mostly due to new program development. Also, I think COVID got some people thinking that they might as well go to graduate school right now, but we're really seeing the growth in our new programs that we've developed. So I think, of course, as our presenters just went over at Montclair State, the process is really important. And it's very clear, as Scott was saying, that it is nice for the ideas to come from the bottom up, for people to feel very connected to the ideas, but they don't always come that way. And I do find even when something is really from the bottom up, that I should take a leadership role, and I mean a leadership role that might be kind of quiet, but I should organize and have a plan and explain to the faculty when they're interested in a new project how we should go about this. So it is the case that before I came to the university, there were some graduate programs that had come up to actually fruition and being offered that hadn't been fully vetted and hadn't been led through this process. So it is important from a dean's perspective that there is a pathway set out from the beginning to create a new program. As Scott was saying, at Montclair State, governance needs to be informed about the institution's idea about new programs. Is the institution hungry for new programs? what kind of things are they looking for. One thing I had to dispel when I got to Bridgewater State 4 years ago was that we were not in the mood to be creating graduate programs that had 5 students in them, so that we were looking for a sizable graduate program. And that was a shock to some people. I said, I could spend my time, and I do actually, growing the programs that we already have. This year, one of the reasons we grew is we offered enrollment to 30 more incoming Masters of Social Work students than we had expected. And that was a great surprise that we had so many qualified students, but we decided that we were able to be flexible and to grow that program quickly. And that was something we had been planning to do next year, but we just did it a year early. So we were able to move. But I explained to faculty, if they're thinking of a program that has 5 students in it, we would probably use our time and resources better to just grow an existing program. We put together a new process for programs at the university back in 2019, and that was led by the provost. And I think it is important to have leadership buy-in throughout the institution for any new process. And an idea called the Quick Idea Form was implemented by the associate provost, and she came to governance and provided the idea for this form. And this form makes note of market resources and resources that the provost is going to provide. So right away, the faculty are having discussions with the provost about things that they might need for the program. So if they say that we're making a new biology program and we think that we're not going to be able to do that with the existing faculty, we think another faculty member is warranted, they have an idea from the provost if he thinks that that's a good idea to pursue or that's a no-go. And I think that's important. We made it so that this idea form is not mandatory, it's just highly suggested. So if there are a group of faculty who feel like they do want to go on their own and they don't want to seek this sort of assurance from the top that the resources will be there, that they could pursue it. But this makes it a lot more sure that we could have an outcome at the end that's a good one. We also, of course, seek outside evaluation before preparing the new program materials. Right now we have a contract with the firm EduVentures, which you may be familiar with, and they do a comprehensive market evaluation report like Sheryl does. And then we also do our own internal work as well. We appoint faculty to lead the process. This can be a very big process. So I actually have been paying people to do it when I am behind the idea. So I pay people, depending on how long we think the process is going to be, to lead the process forward. And I also pay people to create new courses because that can be a lot of work. And some of you are familiar with Bridgewater State University and the state university system. Our graduate school is self-funded, so we have a different funding model. And it's complicated because all the work that the faculty do in most departments is in addition to their normal contract. So that's one of the reasons that I work out this way. So then we align other forms with our state approval process. We too have a state approval process for all new programs. It's a little less cumbersome than middle states, but we have a similar process. And we wanted all the forms that we had to really be just exactly like the state forms so that we wouldn't have to duplicate the work. So when we're ready and we get through governance, we're pretty much ready to go to the state. Our quick idea form is very simple, like Scott said that his was. We call it the new academic program quick idea sharing form. And it just asks for the new program to be what is going to be developed, intended student outcomes for that program, required and unique experiences beyond the traditional classroom. And this I bolded and really wanted to highlight because of course that's really indicative of a great PSM program. What will graduates of the program be able to do? That's a key PSM question. and what is the rationale for adding this program to BSU offerings, and how does it align with the academic affairs strategic plan, right? There's lots of great ideas, but is that a great idea for your university? Are people looking to your university for that kind of program? And what resources are anticipated? And for me, that's a really important question. So faculty enthusiasm, I think, cannot be underrated here. I always ask faculty what makes them click. What do they like about their job? What is exciting about their job? And partners outside of the university are key here. I ask them, the faculty, what skills do you have that are not being tapped by our current programs? What outside skills, do you have lab skills that you're not teaching? Do you have a area of academic expertise that you don't have offering any classes in at the moment? Is there a depth of undergraduate offerings? Because I'm thinking about graduate programs. Do we have an area of expertise at the university in which we do not have any corresponding graduate programs? So we are really not following up on that area of expertise. What is the skill need in the area? Of course, we are going to need to have jobs for our graduates. We want to partner with local businesses. And as far as I'm able, I like to make an advisory council. And these days, everybody thinks they're going to be put on an advisory council to be asked for money in about 3 minutes. So sometimes I just say, look, that's not what this one is about. We are really wanting to know from you what you're looking for in your industry, who you want to hire, what kind of skills do they have. And we create that council. The council is also a great place to recruit possible companies that will offer internships. And we also have our students attend the meetings so they can meet each other. And often we walk out of that meeting with internships for the summer. And we like to familiarize the faculty with PSM. And one of the ways I do this is by giving them materials to read. And I love the little book that was put out by CGS. I think we need to update that, but that PSM guide has really turned a lot of faculty towards PSM and understanding what they can do with it. So that's been very successful for us. This is a partial list of new programs I've been working on. We just put together computer science, which is not on this list. And because it's already developed, but that program was born as a PSM, but they had not formally requested membership. And so we did go and apply with that program to get our membership. And that has been a really exciting opportunity for us. Our computer science program has specialties in cybersecurity and AI and requires an internship and was built on the PSM standard. So it was really an easy transition for us to formally apply for that. We're now working on a cybersecurity MS to go along with the computer science degree, a biology MS. We have given them the PSM book, so I'm waiting for their feedback on that. Mathematics MS, which would not be a PSM, it's more of a theoretical mathematics. We are working on public relations. Surprisingly to me, we have put in place professional tennis management, and it is like a PSM because it is internships required, and there is a huge need for tennis professionals. Higher ed leadership, online program design, both K-12 and higher ed. People thought we were crazy to offer a K-12 online teaching certificate, but it was prescient, I think. We have a new coaching degree, and we put together a variety of 4+1 programs. So again, starting with the faculty enthusiasm, growing from there. And I have to say, as a dean, I'm probably more in the weeds than most deans are, because I'm so excited about these kinds of programs. And I do bring ideas to the faculty. The tennis idea, for instance, came from a previous place where I had been a dean, and my connection with the USTA, and I brought that to Bridgewater State that wasn't something that was on their radar screen. But I just said, it's no pressure, but here's an idea that you might explore. And Bridgewater State happened to have a really broad and deep physical education department. It was a very good synergy for us. So that's where I come from, and happy to talk about this more with everyone.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm glad we have a nice little piece of time now for a discussion and questions. I certainly see a lot of similarities between Bridgewater State and Montclair State, and particularly in our growth areas and some of the programs that you've developed, that we've developed, that are also doing well. So that says at least something about graduate education in the Northeast. I'd like to allow, maybe we could take the screen off so that we can see one another better.
Yes.
And I always like that when I can see people. And I would like to open it up. I'm hoping that everybody has the ability to unmute themselves if they would like to speak up, and I would just encourage them. There we are. So I would encourage them to do that. So this is the really hard part for me, where I actually have to be quiet and let somebody else speak. So I'm going to try to be really good at that. Jerry's laughing because he knows me too well.
I'm going to speak, and I know the group is shocked, for those of you that know me. So thank you, everybody, for that fabulous presentation. And I got a lot out of it as we continue to grow here at the university. I especially want to thank you both as deans for being... Oh,
Judy?
Yeah.
Could you please say where you're coming from?
Sure,
well?
sure.
I forgot to
You may
mention
not
that.
want me to say that after this next comment, but I am the director of a healthcare genetics PSM at the University of Connecticut. There are other PSMs at our university. You all know Linda Strasbach. She was our initiator. But I wanted to say thank you to the deans who are supportive and help faculty, pay faculty, and initiate new PSM programs. For me, this is a new philosophy, a new exciting idea. So thank you both for that. I also wanted to just ask a couple questions. It's actually about your market research, Sheryl, if you don't mind.
Sure.
You had mentioned something about the commercials and the websites and the videos. And I wondered what your takeaway message was from that. Are you finding a link between whether or not a program has a fancy video, whether they're successful, or what are your thoughts there?
So it's a general observation that in the role that I've had here at the university over the last 4 years, I have seen such an increase in the use of video on these websites across the board. So that's the first observation. And it is generally, as I said, well, sometimes they're program directors or even the dean speaking, but more often than not, they are videos of current students or graduates talking about outcomes, not just the program experience, the support they received from the faculty, what a great experience it was, et cetera, but the outcomes and where it led them so that they could be in the position they're in today, or what they hope to achieve moving down the road. So that's the first general observation. From a marketing metric sort of perspective, we see in our own measurements an increase in engagement with video over time, particularly over the last year. And so our theory is that, of course, engagements with, looking at videos and actually watching them through the end, are going to drive people to the site, which will in effect drive them hopefully to inquire about a program and eventually perhaps apply to a program. So that's the idea behind it. And this is something that we are starting to look at in more detail, actually within the last 6 months, frankly. So to try to make that connection.
I'd be interested in your findings. And then I'd also like to quickly comment about SIP codes and how could we please just get rid of them?
I wish we could.
They're just too they're too restrictive, especially for those of us that are doing PSMs and looking for that interprofessionalism, interdisciplinary. So I don't know what kind of weight you hold in New Jersey, but let's get rid of them.
Yeah, I know they are limiting, and unfortunately, so much of the data is only available by zip code. So we're rather limited, but I can suggest sort of a bottom-up approach, and that is particularly with regard to PSMs, to look at rather than look at start out with the zip code, start out with the demands in the marketplace, look at what is going on, what are the skills needed, where are the jobs growing, and build it up from there, and then kind of fit it into a CIP code. Because it, I mean, it may not be something that you would expect.
Right, right.
So that's the approach I would take, particularly with regard to PSM degrees. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that, Sheryl, that gets to where I started too, with the idea of backwards design. Like, what are you trying to create? You're not looking at little columns of zip codes and which one does it fit into. Unfortunately, a lot of our reporting is, based on zip codes. We can't get away from them. And Judy, I wanted to say one other thing before I go to a question that's in our chat, and I'm saying that to give everybody some fertile time to be incubating other questions for us. But since I came to Montclair State, I've never recorded more videos as a dean in front of my little webcam for all of the events that we do. And so it's a thing out there, definitely.
Can I jump in on that for a second, Scott?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
I think that was a great question. And I think we're really lucky that we have PSM as an identity for these interdisciplinary and very, practically oriented science degrees, because that helps to explain our difference. I think for other creative master's degrees that we might have, for instance, we've been putting together something that it started out as liberal studies, and then it sort of became this idea we called sustainable communities, which really met the needs of a lot of students who felt like they wanted to keep studying with us, but we did not have an option for them. But sustainable communities sounded like an environmental studies program, right? So we're like, that's not the right name, because what we mean is sort of a social science approach, and not so much necessarily the environment. When we're trying to do something creative in higher ed, it's really hard to get a name that people will Google or find us somewhere, and then know what the heck we're talking about. So it might really be something that would lead to jobs, but it's very hard to make that clear in the marketplace. When you might have, we've been doing a lot of geofencing and banner ads, and it might just say cybersecurity, that right? But if I say sustainable communities, I don't know what that means.
Ray asked a question in the chat. So what's considered a critical mass of students to launch a new graduate program, and how much time is expected for a program to ramp up? A question that I've faced more than 1,000 times here at the institution. We had a very rote approach to the incoming class of a brand new program as being 25 students. And incoming class should have 25, the second year should be 50. And that was just not practical for a lot of programs. The notion of an incubation time for a new master's program to develop over several years is a hard sell when someone's just looking at resources and fiscal sustainability of programs. So there's some competing tension there. We've launched programs that have not met that target, many, and some of them have, more than a few have really had a substantial growth in their second year. They've started very small. And when I was at a different institution, at a very large R1 with, we had about 11,000 grad students, there was far less pressure to have, these large incoming classes for a new master's program. And I always, they would say like, oh, I don't know if we want to launch early. I would just tell them, go ahead and launch this year. Just consider it a practice year. You'll work on the curriculum, you'll make some changes, and in your second year you'll have your big incoming cohort. That model doesn't work for like a mid-sized institution. So we aim high. We may not make those targets, but we're gonna work to develop what we think is really making valuable contributions. And we've seen a lot of growth in the second year. And some programs have just been spectacular. Lisa, social work is one example that we didn't have to do anything, and they just, every year, they're just going like nuts. So it's discipline, it's very specific to the discipline as well. I'll give one example. So we got a new degree in computational linguistics. And so, like what Lisa was saying, what the heck is computational linguistics, But if you think about, when you're in your Word program and you say, instead of proofreading this, I want the computer to speak to me and read my text back to me, there are jobs in computational linguistics, and interesting jobs. And they had a very small start, but this is their second year. And getting that message out as to what the job is and what to prospective applicants has helped a lot. And yes, Judy, that did involve a lot of videos to have students talk about the program and where they're going with that. So Lisa, you may want to say something from your
Yeah,
institution.
as a dean, I'm really focused on enrollment management, and it's never enrollment management about just filling the numbers, right? It's about getting quality candidates and quality growth in your program and making sure everything is really, going well. We, at our university, being a mid-sized university, having a new program with 30 incoming students, like we hope the public relations degree will be, is a sizable gain. So for other universities, that would not be sizable, but for us, that'll be a big win. And the resources needed make it a doable situation for that size of growth. We are not able to, at this point, for instance, start this liberal studies or a social science degree that's a broad interdisciplinary degree like we want, because we don't have any other existing social science graduate programs. So I had the fun when I was a graduate student of starting my studies at University of Chicago and taking their MAPS program, which is the Master's in Social Science. And I got to take anything at the university I wanted to, basically, that made sense, that I could talk my advisor into. And it was like, I was like a kid at the candy store. That was great for University of Chicago because they're just putting me into a room that was already filled with sociology grad students and history grad students and women's studies graduate students. And then I was just money added to the pile. But for other people, for other universities, that would not be such a great idea because, like my own, we do not have a whole breadth of social science courses. So, sometimes you can kind of layer different degrees on that can use similar coursework and, market in different ways. That's a really good way to position yourself. But we don't have a lot of ways to do that at our university. So we have to create new programs. When you start a program, often like the cybersecurity, there was a huge demand for entrance into it right away. I wanted to market it for another year before we launched it, but people just really wanted to get in. So I think if you do what I'm calling a soft launch, you just want to make sure the president and the provost are aware that you didn't really mean to start it yet, because right now I have a very small group of cybersecurity students, but that's because I just started advertising in August for the program.
Yeah, we've had the same scenario where we've gotten through the approval process and gotten state approval in the middle of the summer, and we have a month to market the program before. So soft launch is a good term.
Yeah, I think we all share the same experiences, and to some extent, an important factor is envisioning what's my ask as a fellow dean, what's my ask of, say, the provost going to be. Some programs, there's not a big ask. The program director may be borrowing some effort from someone who's already 100%. I may repurpose some courses, but need a few new courses, and so on, as would be familiar to us. So in some cases, a fairly modest initial cohort can sell, as long as all the other elements all our colleagues presented, also fall in place, and your pro forma 5-year budget shows where you're going to go. So I think there's maybe not only one answer. The other thing I thought to add, just that, all the basics are the same as we've heard from our colleagues. I can think of 3 other things we do as a multi-step approval process. My very first presentation would be what we call the Provost Council of Deans. If I've got an idea for something new, I want to be sure my colleagues all know about it. 1, so we're not stepping on toes. 2, so we're not missing synergies and efficiencies, for all those good reasons. And that's early in the game. We're going to come back to that group later with the full-fledged proposal. But then there's one other intermediate piece where we go to what I'll call the committee of, the academic services committee, meaning, registrar, financial aid, room scheduling, because there's a difference. If I'm squeezing in a low overhead program with 5 new students to get started, it's not going to bother anybody. If I want to start a program where I need a new laboratory and so on, and it's going to tax enrollment management and financial aid, that's a whole nother thing. So I think we parallel each other very, very much, but that's maybe one other thing we do. My last thought is everything we've heard is very grounded in what I would call standard institutional procedures, essentially. And it reminds me, sometimes I have a discussion with a PSM colleague who's having some challenges, shall we say, how can I get the provost to understand me, and how can I fund my PSM program? And I think it really points to, even though we try to have PSMs stand apart in many ways with a unique identity, at the end of the day, there is some benefit to, it is a master's graduate program, and by embedding it in institutional ethos, financial and otherwise, it gives us a leg up. So we're not fighting against the system, we're working with the system. So it cuts a little bit both ways to have a unique identity, but everything we've heard fits in with the, the system. So that's an advantage, I think, as well.
I'm going to call because it's 4 o'clock now. So I want to thank all of our speakers, or do the hand wave, the Zoom hand wave. And I want to thank everyone for attending, thank everyone for participating, and I hope we see you at our next Ask NPSMA, so just look out for your emails. So thank you all, and have a great rest of the afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to see everybody.